She lies. But not to me anymore.
Marriage is like custom cabinetry. One wrong cut and it all falls apart. Standing in my workshop at 6 in the morning, running my hands over a piece of cherry wood that costs more than most people's monthly rent, I should have seen the parallels. Perfect grain on the surface, rot underneath. But hindsight's 2020, and I was still blind to what my wife Sienna had become. The charity gala was supposed to be our night. Sienna's tech company, Dataflow Solutions, was hosting their annual fundraiser at the Portland Harbor Hotel. Black tie, open bar, the works. I'd even bought a new suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored because God knows Sienna would notice if I looked anything less than perfect next to her colleagues. "Evan, you ready?" Sienna called from upstairs. Her voice had that edge it got when she was stressed about appearances. Everything was about appearances with her now. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, the old Victorian house creaking under my feet. We'd bought it 5 years ago when my custom cabinet business really took off. Sienna loved telling people we lived in a historic home. She never mentioned that I'd spent every weekend for 2 years fixing the plumbing and rewiring the electrical. She stood in front of our full-length mirror, adjusting a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. Her auburn hair was pulled back in some complicated style that had taken her 2 hours to perfect. "You look beautiful," I said, meaning it. Even after 8 years of marriage, she could still take my breath away. She barely glanced at me. "Thanks. Did you remember to transfer money for the silent auction? I told everyone we'd bid on the Napa Valley trip." "Already done." I straightened my tie. $5,000 in the auction account. "Good." She grabbed her clutch, checked her phone. "Kara's going to live stream parts of the evening. Make sure you smile when she points the camera at us." Kara Whitman was Sienna's best friend and biggest enabler, a social media manager who treated every gathering like content for her Instagram stories. She'd been documenting Sienna's life obsessively for the past year, turning every dinner out and weekend trip into a carefully curated performance. The Harbor Hotel's ballroom was packed with Portland's tech elite and their spouses. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, waiters, circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked like tiny works of art. Sienna immediately went into networking mode, her laugh becoming brighter and more musical as she worked the room. I grabbed a beer from the bar and found myself talking to Tom Bradley, whose wife worked in Sienna's department. "How's business, Evan?" Tom asked. He was a good guy, an accountant who understood the value of honest work. "Can't complain, just finished a kitchen renovation in Cape Elizabeth. 20-foot island, custom everything. Client's thrilled." "That's great, man. Jennifer says Sienna's been ending it at work, too. Up for a promotion?" Before I could answer, Kara appeared with her phone already recording. "Evan, perfect timing. Say hi to my followers." She thrust the phone in my face. I gave a polite wave, feeling ridiculous. "Isn't he handsome?" Kara gushed to her camera. "Sienna is so lucky." "Where is she, by the way?" I scanned the room and spotted Sienna near the silent auction tables, deep in conversation with a guy I didn't recognize. Tall, probably early 30s, with perfectly styled dark hair and the kind of confident smile that came from never being told no. "Who's that?" I asked Tom. "Oh, that's Tristan Bell. New hire in marketing. Kid's got some fancy MBA from Wharton. Bit full of himself, if you ask me." I watched as Tristan leaned closer to Sienna, saying something that made her throw her head back and laugh. Her real laugh, not the networking one. The evening wore on. Dinner was served, some complicated fish dish that tasted like it came with its own trust fund. Sienna sat next to me, but might as well have been on another planet. She spent most of the meal texting and checking her Instagram likes. "The salmon's good," I said, making conversation. "Mm-hmm." She didn't look up from her phone. After dinner, the band started playing. I stood and offered her my hand. "Dance?" She glanced around the room, calculating. "I don't know. I'm waiting for Kara to finish her interview with the CEO. Come on, one dance. Remember our wedding? You made me practice for weeks." Something flickered across her face. Annoyance. Maybe embarrassment. "Evan, not now. People are watching." "So, we're married. Married people dance." I reached for her hand anyway, gently pulling her toward the dance floor. She resisted at first, then reluctantly followed. The band was playing something slow and romantic, and for a moment I thought we might recapture whatever we'd lost. Then I leaned in to kiss her. She pushed me away hard enough that people nearby turned to stare. "Stop it, Evan. You're embarrassing me." The words hit like a slap. Around us, conversations died. Phones appeared, including Kara's, which was definitely recording. "I'm embarrassing you?" I kept my voice low, but I could feel heat rising in my chest. "By trying to kiss my wife?" "Everyone's looking," she hissed. "I don't want to look taken." The ballroom felt like it was spinning. 8 years of marriage, and she didn't want to look taken. I became aware of the whispers. The phones pointed in our direction, the way people were suddenly very interested in our personal business. I reached down and slowly twisted my wedding ring off my finger. The gold band caught the chandelier light as I placed it carefully on the nearest table. "Problem solved," I said. The silence was deafening. Then the whispers started in earnest, spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. Kara's phone was definitely still recording, and I could see other people pulling out their devices. Sienna's face went white, then red. "Evan, what are you doing?" "Giving you what you want." "You don't want to look taken?" "Congratulations. You're not." I turned and walked out of the ballroom, leaving my wife standing alone on the dance floor with 300 witnesses and God knows how many social media followers watching her perfect image crumble in real time. The drive home from the hotel took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of my phone buzzing constantly with texts, calls, and notifications. I turned it off and drove in blessed silence through the empty Portland streets. Our house looked different somehow when I pulled into the driveway. Still the same yellow Victorian with the wraparound porch I'd rebuilt by hand, but it felt smaller now, like something had shifted in its foundation. I went straight to my workshop in the basement. The familiar smell of the wood stain and sawdust was comforting. I had a dining room set to finish for a client in Falmouth. 8 chairs that needed their final coat of polyurethane. Mindless, methodical work. Exactly what I needed. I was halfway through the second chair when I heard Sienna's car in the driveway. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. "Evan!" Her voice echoed through the house. "Evan, get up here right now." I kept working. The polyurethane needed to go on smooth, no bubbles, no missed spots. Like everything else I did, it had to be perfect. Her heels clicked on the basement stairs. She appeared in the doorway still wearing her gala dress, but her perfect hair was disheveled and her makeup was smeared. "What the heck was that?" she demanded. I didn't look up from the chair. "What was what?" "Don't play dumb with me. That scene at the hotel. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I gave you exactly what you asked for." I dipped the brush again, kept the strokes even. "You didn't want to look taken. Mission accomplished." "That's not what I meant, and you know it." Now I did look up. "What did you mean, Sienna? Explain it to me like I'm stupid." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she didn't have a ready answer. "Because from where I was standing," I continued, "it looked like my wife was ashamed to be seen with me, ashamed to be married to me. Was I wrong?" "It's not that simple." "Sure it is. Either you're proud to be my wife or you're not. Tonight you made it pretty clear which one it is." She sat down on my workbench, suddenly looking exhausted. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. There are politics, appearances that matter. That promotion I'm up for, what does your promotion have to do with being embarrassed by your husband?" Tristan said. She stopped abruptly. "Tristan?" The name hit me like a physical blow. "The pretty boy you were talking to all night? What does he have to do with anything?" "Nothing, he's a colleague. He was giving me advice about navigating office dynamics." "And his advice was to act single?" "No, of course not. You're twisting everything." I set down the brush and really looked at her. The woman I'd married had been confident, but never cruel, ambitious, but never at the expense of others. When had she become this stranger who cared more about appearances than her own marriage? "I'm going to bed," she said finally. "We'll talk about this tomorrow when you're being rational." After she left, I sat in the workshop for another hour, not working, just thinking. My phone was still off, but I could imagine the social media explosion happening without me. By morning, half of Portland would know that Evan Harper had publicly removed his wedding ring at the Dataflow charity gala. Around midnight, I went upstairs. Sienna was already asleep, or pretending to be. I grabbed a pillow and went back to the couch in my workshop. It wouldn't be the first time I'd slept there, though usually it was because I'd worked too late on a project, not because my marriage was falling apart. I woke up at 5:30 to the sound of my phone buzzing. I'd forgotten to turn it back on, but apparently it had rebooted itself during the night. 47 missed calls, over 100 text messages and more social media notifications than I could count. Most of the texts were from friends and family who'd seen the videos online. Brick Morrison, my best friend since high school, had sent a dozen messages. Dude, what happened? Call me. Saw the video on Facebook. Are you okay? Seriously, call me. I scrolled through more messages. My sister in Boston. Evan, mom saw something online. Call her. My client in Cape Elizabeth. Hope everything's okay. Still want those cabinets delivered Tuesday? Even my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Avery. Dear, if you need anything, I'm right next door. But it was the last text that made my blood run cold. From a number I didn't recognize. Sent at 2:47 a.m. Saw what happened tonight. If you want to know what your wife's really been up to, meet me at Denny's on Forest Avenue tomorrow at 8 a.m. Come alone. I stared at the message for a long time. Every instinct told me it was probably some crank who'd seen the videos and wanted to cause trouble. But there was something about the phrasing, the specificity, that made me think twice. Upstairs, I could hear Sienna moving around, getting ready for work like it was any other day. The shower ran for exactly 12 minutes, her usual routine. Hair dryer for 8 minutes. Then, the familiar sounds of her morning ritual. Coffee maker, news on the iPad. Heels clicking across the hardwood floors. I waited until I heard her car leave before going upstairs. The kitchen smelled like her expensive perfume and the vanilla coffee creamer she special ordered online. Her coffee cup was in the sink, lipstick print on the rim. Such a normal, domestic detail, but it felt like evidence of something I couldn't quite name. Her iPad was still on the counter, open to her email. I wasn't in the habit of snooping, but something made me glance at the screen. Most of it was work stuff. Meeting requests, project updates, the usual corporate nonsense. But one email caught my eye. From Tristan Bell, sent at 11:23 p.m. last night. Hope you're okay after tonight's drama. Want to grab coffee tomorrow and talk? I know a place that's private. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times. Coffee, private. Less than 2 hours after I'd walked out of the gala. My hands were shaking as I took a screenshot with my phone. I'd never spied on Sienna before, never felt the need to. But that text from the unknown number was starting to make more sense. At 7:45 a.m., I was sitting in my truck outside the Denny's on Forest Avenue, watching early commuters grab coffee and breakfast sandwiches. I felt ridiculous, like I was in some bad detective movie. But I was here, which said something about how desperate I was for answers. At exactly 8 o'clock, a woman in her 50s approached my truck. I recognized her as someone from Sienna's office. I'd seen her at company Christmas parties. Sandy hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the look of someone who noticed everything and said little. I rolled down my window. You're the one who texted? I'm Margaret Chen, from HR. Can we talk inside? Denny's was nearly empty except for a few construction workers and one guy who looked like he'd been there all night. Margaret ordered coffee and sat across from me in a corner booth. I shouldn't be doing this, she said without preamble. But what I saw last night, you deserve to know. Know what? She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Sienna and Tristan at what looked like a restaurant, sitting very close together, his hand covering hers on the table. This was taken 3 weeks ago at Lucia's downtown. They've been meeting regularly for about 2 months. My stomach dropped. Meeting for what? At first, I thought it was work-related. Tristan's been consulting on the Morrison account that Sienna's managing. But then I started noticing other things. Long lunches that weren't on anyone's calendar. Sienna leaving early on days when Tristan was also out. Whispered conversations that stopped when other people approached. She showed me another photo. This one was more recent. Sienna and Tristan in the parking garage, under her office building, standing close enough to kiss. I took this one last Friday. I was working late, saw them from my office window. I stared at the image, trying to process what I was seeing. Why are you showing me this? Because I've been married for 28 years and I know what betrayal looks like. And because your wife has been telling people at the office that you're controlling and jealous, setting up a narrative. A narrative for what? For when she leaves you. She's been asking HR about the company's policy on dating between departments. Hypothetically, of course. The coffee tasted like ash in my mouth. How long have you known? I suspected for weeks, but I wasn't sure until last night. The way they looked at each other during the gala, the way she reacted when you tried to kiss her, it all made sense. Margaret reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Evan, I know this is hard to hear. I drove home in a daze. Margaret's photos burned into my brain. The house felt different when I walked in, not like a home anymore, but like a crime scene where I was gathering evidence. Sienna's laptop was on the kitchen counter, closed but not locked. I'd never violated her privacy before, but apparently we were in uncharted territory now. Her browser history told the story Margaret's photos had started. Restaurant reservations for two at places I'd never heard of. Google searches for how to tell your husband you want a divorce, and Maine divorce laws community property. A Pinterest board titled New Beginning filled with images of single woman apartments and inspirational quotes about independence. But it was the text messages that really destroyed me. Months of them, going back to February. Tristan calling her beautiful, complaining about his boring girlfriend, making plans to meet. Sienna responding with heart emojis and messages about how unhappy she was at home. The most recent exchange was from this morning. Tristan. Last night was crazy. Are you okay? Sienna. Embarrassed but relieved. It's been building for months. Tristan. Maybe it's a sign. Time for a fresh start? Sienna. Maybe it is. Coffee later? I need to talk to someone who understands. Tristan. Always. You know I'm here for you. I screenshotted everything, my hands steady now despite the rage building in my chest. If Sienna wanted a fresh start, I'd give her one. But it wasn't going to be the fairy tale she was imagining. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Sienna and I moved around each other like polite strangers sharing a hotel room. She left early for work and came home late, always with explanations about important meetings or project deadlines. I worked in my shop, finished the Falmouth dining set, and started planning. The social media storm from the gala had died down, but the damage was done. Half our friends were texting me with concerned messages, while the other half seemed to be waiting to see which side to choose. It's funny how quickly people start picking teams when a marriage implodes publicly. Brick Morrison showed up at my workshop Wednesday evening with a six-pack of beer and the kind of direct approach that had made him a good Marine and an even better friend. All right, Harper, what's the real story? He cracked open a beer and settled onto my workbench like he owned the place. At 6'3" with arms like tree trunks, Brick had a way of making any space feel smaller. I told him everything. The photos from Margaret, the text messages, the months of lies disguised as late meetings and work trips. Brick listened without interrupting, his expression getting darker with each detail. Son of a witch, he said when I finished. What do you want to do about it? I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront her, have it out in the open. But another part of me thinks I should let her keep digging her own grave. Smart money's on option 2. Give her enough rope, she'll hang herself. Brick drained his beer. You got a lawyer yet? Not yet. I keep thinking maybe we can work it out, but she's screwing around with some office pretty boy and planning her exit strategy. Brick's voice was matter of fact, no judgment. Evan, you're a good guy. Too good, maybe, but this isn't about being nice anymore. This is about protecting yourself. He was right, and I knew it. But knowing something and accepting it are different things. Thursday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was installing cabinet hardware in my shop when I heard a knock at the front door. Through the window, I saw Tessa Lynn, one of Sienna's friends from her book club. Tessa was different from the rest of Sienna's crowd. Quieter, more thoughtful. A librarian at Portland Public who'd always struck me as genuinely kind, rather than performatively nice like Kara and the others. Hi, Evan. I hope you don't mind me stopping by. Of course not. Come in. Coffee? We sat at my kitchen table. The same one where Sienna and I used to have breakfast together every morning before work became more important than marriage. I wanted to talk to you about what happened at the gala, Tessa said, and about some things I've been noticing, such as... Tessa hesitated, then seemed to make up her mind. Sienna's been different lately. More secretive, more concerned with image than substance. The book club has noticed. How so? She used to actually read the books. Now she just skims Spark Notes and spends most of the meetings talking about work or showing us pictures from expensive restaurants. Last month, Kara suggested we read some self-help book about living your authentic life instead of the Toni Morrison novel we'd planned. Sienna was all for it. I poured more coffee, letting Tessa find her words. The thing is, some of us started wondering who she was having all these business dinners with. The restaurants she was posting about. They're not really business dinner places, if you know what I mean. Romantic places? Exactly. Candlelit, intimate. Not where you'd take a client or discuss quarterly reports. Tessa pulled out her phone. I probably shouldn't show you this, but the photo is from Instagram, posted to Sienna's story 2 weeks ago. A dimly lit table set for two, wine glasses, the kind of cozy atmosphere that screamed date night. The caption read, "Working dinner, but at least the ambiance is nice. Blessed # work life." That's Petite Jacqueline, Tessa said. I know because my husband took me there for our anniversary. It's the most romantic restaurant in the old port. No one talks business there. I studied the photo, noting details I'd missed when Sienna showed it to me originally. 2 wine glasses, both with lipstick prints, a dessert plate with 2 forks, her wedding ring noticeably absent from the hand holding the wine glass. There's more, Tessa said reluctantly. Kara's been acting weird too. She keeps making comments about how Sienna deserves better, how successful women sometimes outgrow their first marriages. It's like she's building a narrative. That's what Margaret from HR said. Building a narrative. Tessa looked surprised. You talked to Margaret Chen? I told her about the Denny's meeting, the photos, the evidence of months of deception. Tessa listened with growing anger. I can't believe this. We all thought you two were solid. Sienna used to talk about you constantly. How talented you were. How proud she was of your business success. When did that change? Around the time Tristan started at Dataflow. Suddenly, every conversation became about work stress and how hard it was being married to someone who didn't understand the corporate world. Tessa made air quotes, her distaste obvious. I need to ask you something, and I understand if you can't answer, I said. Are the other book club members talking about this? Do they know what's going on? Tessa sighed. It's complicated. Kara's completely in Sienna's corner, no matter what. She sees herself as Sienna's best friend and biggest supporter. But Sarah and Jennifer have been asking questions. They're not stupid, and they like you. What kind of questions? About whether Sienna's been honest about your marriage problems. About whether this whole thing is as one-sided as she's been making it seem. Tessa leaned forward. Evan, I think you need to know that Sienna's been telling people you're controlling and unsupportive of her career. That you resent her success. The accusation hit like a physical blow. That's not true. I've always supported her career. Heck, I encouraged her to take the Dataflow job in the first place. I know. That's why some of us are starting to see through the story she's spinning. After Tessa left, I sat in my kitchen feeling like the ground was shifting under my feet. It wasn't just about Sienna having an affair anymore. She was actively working to rewrite the history of our marriage, painting me as the villain in her story of liberation. That evening, Sienna came home with takeout from our favorite Thai place. For a moment, I wondered if she was trying to make peace, to find our way back to each other. I thought we could have dinner together, she said, unpacking containers of pad thai and green curry. We haven't talked much this week. We ate in relative silence, the conversation stilted and careful. She asked about my work, I asked about hers, everything polite and surface level, like we were acquaintances rather than spouses. Evan, she said finally, I think we need to talk about what happened at the gala. Okay. The way you reacted, it was humiliating. People are still talking about it. I set down my fork. I reacted to you pushing me away when I tried to kiss you, in public, at a work function where everyone knows we're married. It wasn't personal, the timing wasn't right. When is the timing right, Sienna? Because I can't remember the last time you wanted me to touch you in public or private. She flushed. That's not fair. Isn't it? When's the last time we had dinner together without you checking your phone? When's the last time we had a conversation about something other than your work or your friends or your social media presence? You're being dramatic. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I've been living with a roommate for months. A roommate who's embarrassed to be seen with me. Sienna stood up abruptly. I can't do this right now. I have a conference call with the West Coast team in 20 minutes. At 8 o'clock at night? It's 5 o'clock in California, Evan. Some of us have demanding jobs that don't end at 5:30. The dig was subtle but clear. My blue-collar work wasn't as important as her corporate career. I watched her grab her laptop and head upstairs, leaving me alone with the remnants of our failed attempt at reconciliation. Later that night, I heard her on the phone in her office. The door closed, but her voice carrying through the old house's thin walls. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was soft, intimate. The way she used to talk to me? I checked the time, 10:47 p.m. Too late for a work call, even with the West Coast. Friday brought the kind of October rain that turns Portland's streets into rivers and makes everyone drive like they've never seen water before. I was in my shop working on a custom bookshelf for a client in Yarmouth when my phone rang. Kara Whitman's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Kara had been Sienna's mouthpiece for years, and I doubted she was calling to check on my well-being. But curiosity won out. Evan, hi. I hope you don't mind me calling. What can I do for you, Kara? I wanted to talk to you about Sienna, about what's been happening. I set down my sander and gave her my full attention. I'm listening. Look, I know things have been tense between you two lately, but what happened at the gala was really hurtful. Sienna's been devastated. Devastated by what, exactly? By the public humiliation. By having her personal business broadcast all over social media. She's getting comments from people she barely knows, asking if she's getting divorced. I felt a laugh building in my chest, but it wasn't a happy sound. Kara, let me ask you something. In all the conversations you've had with Sienna about our marriage, has she mentioned being happy? Has she talked about wanting to work things out, or has she been complaining about how awful I am? Silence on the other end of the line. Because I'm starting to get the impression that Sienna's been painting a very specific picture of our relationship. One where I'm the problem and she's the victim. It's not that simple, Kara said finally. Sure it is. Either my wife loves me and wants to save our marriage, or she doesn't. Which is it? She's confused right now. There's a lot of pressure at work, and she's been questioning everything in her life, including her marriage. Including her marriage, Kara admitted. But that doesn't mean she wants to throw it all away, doesn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like she's been planning her exit for months. Another silence. Then, what do you mean? I almost told her about the text messages, the secret meetings, the Pinterest board full of single life inspiration. But something held me back. If Kara didn't know about Tristan, that was information I might need later. I mean, she's been pulling away from me for months, Kara. And now I find out she's been telling people I'm controlling and unsupportive. So forgive me if I'm not buying the confused and devastated narrative. Evan, I think you're misunderstanding. Am I? Let me ask you something else. Has Sienna been spending time with anyone new lately? Someone from work, maybe? The pause was telling. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question. Sienna has a lot of colleagues. It's a collaborative environment. That's not an answer, Kara. I think you're being paranoid, and I think you're being evasive, which tells me everything I need to know. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking with anger, not at Kara, but at the whole situation. Everyone seemed to know what was happening except me, and when I asked direct questions, I got deflection and gaslighting. That evening, I decided to stop playing defense. I drove to the Glass Tap, a bar downtown that Sienna and I used to frequent when we were first married. It was the kind of place where locals gathered to complain about work, watch sports, and mind each other's business in the way that small communities do. Brick was already there, holding down a corner booth and working on what looked like his second beer. He waved me over. You look like heck, he said by way of greeting. Feel like it too. I signaled the bartender for a beer. Had an interesting conversation with Kara Whitman today. Sienna's a tack dog? What did she want? I filled him in on the phone call. Kara's evasiveness, the growing sense that everyone was protecting Sienna, while I was left to figure out the truth on my own. You know what your problem is, Brick said. You're still playing by the rules of the marriage you thought you had. But Sienna checked out months ago. She's playing a different game now. What kind of game? The kind where she gets to be the victim and the hero at the same time. She gets sympathy for being married to a controlling husband, and she gets credit for being brave enough to leave him. The bartender, an older guy named Pete, who'd been working at the Glass Tap for 20 years, set down my beer and lingered. You're Sienna Harper's husband, right? He said. Saw that video from the hotel thing. I nodded, bracing for judgment. For what it's worth, I thought you handled it with class. Could have made a bigger scene, but you just walked away. Thanks. Pete wiped down the bar unnecessarily. She used to come in here with you back in the day. Nice girl, or seemed like it, but she was in here a couple weeks ago with some young guy. Didn't look like a business meeting, if you catch my drift. My stomach tightened. What did they look like together? Like two people who couldn't keep their hands off each other. Real cozy. She kept looking around like she was worried about being seen, but they were definitely intimate. Brick leaned forward. You sure it was her? Positive. Red hair, real put together looking. And the guy was one of those pretty boys, you know? Looked like he stepped out of a magazine. Pete moved on to other customers, leaving Brick and me alone with this new piece of evidence. That's it, Brick said. You're done being the understanding husband. Time to go on offense. What do you mean? I mean, stop letting her control the narrative. Stop letting her friends make you the bad guy. You've got proof she's cheating, right? I nodded. Then use it. Not to hurt her, but to protect yourself. Because I guarantee you she's not going to play fair when this thing goes public. As if summoned by our conversation, the front door of the Glass Tap opened, and Sienna walked in with 3 of her friends. Kara, Sarah Martinez, and Jennifer Walsh. They were dressed for a night out, the kind of girls' night that involved expensive cocktails and Instagram photos. They didn't see me at first, settling into a high-top table near the front windows. But Kara spotted me within minutes, her expression shifting from surprise to something that looked like guilt. She said something to the others, and they all turned to look at me. Sienna's face went pale, then red. This is about to get interesting, Brick muttered. Sienna stood up and walked over to our booth, her friends watching like it was a reality TV show. Evan, I didn't expect to see you here. It's a public place, Sienna. I have as much right to be here as you do. Of course, I just meant we're having girls' night. I don't want any drama. Neither do I. Enjoy your evening. She hesitated like she wanted to say more, then thought better of it. But as she turned to leave, I made a decision. Sienna, wait. She turned back, eyebrows raised. I had an interesting conversation with Kara today about how devastated you've been by what happened at the gala. I have been devastated. By the public humiliation of your husband removing his wedding ring after you pushed him away. By having our private business become public entertainment. I stood up, aware that the entire bar was now listening to our conversation. Our private business. That's interesting phrasing. What do you mean? I mean, if you're so concerned about privacy, maybe you should be more careful about where you have your business dinners. The color drained from her face. I don't know what you're talking about. Petite Jacqueline. 2 weeks ago. Very romantic atmosphere for a work meeting. Behind her, I could see her friends exchanging glances. Kara looked like she wanted to disappear. That was a work dinner, Sienna said, but her voice lacked conviction. With 2 wine glasses and dessert for 2? Must have been some client. Evan, you're making a scene. Am I? Because it seems to me like I'm just asking questions about my wife's work schedule. Unless there's something else I should know about. The standoff lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an hour. Finally, Sienna turned and walked back to her table, grabbing her purse. We're leaving, she announced to her friends. As they filed out, Jennifer Walsh lingered by our booth. For what it's worth, Evan, some of us aren't buying the story she's been telling. After they left, the Glass Tap felt smaller and quieter. Pete brought me another beer without being asked. That took guts, he said. Or stupidity, I'm not sure which. Brick clapped me on the shoulder. Definitely guts. And you just served notice that you're not going to roll over and play dead. I drove home that night feeling like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The polite fiction that Sienna and I were just going through a rough patch was over. Whatever came next would be messier, uglier, and more public than either of us wanted. But maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. The weekend passed in tense silence. Sienna spent most of Saturday at the office, claiming she had to catch up on the Morrison account. Sunday, she went to yoga and then had lunch with her sister in Brunswick. I worked in my shop and tried to pretend everything was normal, but the house felt like a stage set waiting for the next act to begin. Monday morning brought clarity in the form of a text message from Tristan Bell. It was sent to my phone at 7:23 a.m., clearly meant for Sienna. Can't stop thinking about Friday night. When can I see you again? I stared at the message for a long moment, then screenshotted it before responding. Wrong number, Romeo. But thanks for the confirmation. My phone rang within 30 seconds. Unknown number. Who is this? Tristan's voice was panicked. This is Evan Harper, Sienna's husband. The one you've been helping my wife cheat on. Silence. Hello? Still there, Tristan? Look, man, I don't know what you think is happening. I think my wife has been having an affair with you for months. I think you've been meeting at romantic restaurants and texting each other like teenagers. And I think you just accidentally confirmed it by sending me a message meant for her. It's not what you think. Really? What is it then? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty straightforward. We're just friends, close friends. Close friends who can't stop thinking about Friday night? What happened Friday night, Tristan? Another long pause. Nothing happened. So, you can't stop thinking about nothing? That's fascinating. Evan, listen. No, you listen. I know about the restaurants, the secret meetings, the late night phone calls. I know about the Pinterest board and the divorce research. I know my wife has been planning her exit while lying to my face every single day. I never meant for it to happen this way. The admission hung in the air between us. Finally, some truth. But it did happen this way, so now what? I don't know. Here's what's going to happen, Tristan. You're going to stop seeing my wife. You're going to stop texting her, calling her, and having cozy little business meetings. And if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone at Dataflow knows exactly what kind of colleague you are. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm making you a promise. Stay away from my wife, or I'll make your life very complicated. I hung up and immediately called Brick. I need a favor, I said when he answered. Name it. I need you to help me document everything. Photos, videos, whatever we can get legally. Because this is about to get ugly. And I want proof of what really happened. About time, what's the plan? I told him about Tristan's accidental text, the phone call, the admission that something had happened Friday night. Friday night, Brick mused. Wasn't that when Sienna was at girls' night at the Glass Tap? She left early. Said she wasn't feeling well. Want to bet she went straight to Loverboy's place? The thought made me sick, but it fit the pattern. Can you find out where he lives? Give me an hour. While Brick worked his connections, I drove to Dataflow's office building. I wasn't sure what I hoped to accomplish, but I needed to see the place where my marriage had been destroyed. The building was modern glass and steel, all clean lines and corporate ambition. Sienna's car was in the parking garage, third level, same spot she'd parked in for 2 years. I found a coffee shop across the street with a clear view of the building's main entrance and settled in to wait. At 11:47 a.m., Sienna emerged with Tristan. Even from a distance, their body language told the story. They walked close together, his hand briefly touching her back as he held the door. They stopped on the sidewalk, talking intensely, and I could see the tension in their postures. Then Tristan's phone rang. He answered, and his expression changed dramatically. He said something to Sienna that made her face go pale. She grabbed his arm, clearly upset, and they had a heated conversation that lasted several minutes. I was too far away to hear words, but I didn't need to. Tristan had told her about our phone call, and she was realizing that her carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling. They separated after that, Tristan heading toward the parking garage, while Sienna went back into the building. I waited another 20 minutes, then followed Tristan's route to the garage. His car was easy to spot. A red BMW convertible, vanity plates reading T-Bell. The kind of flashy ride that screamed insecurity and disposable income. I took photos of the car, the license plate, the Dataflow parking pass on his dashboard. My phone buzzed with a text from Brick. Got his address? 47 Maple Street, Apt 3B, fancy building in the Arts District. Want me to check it out? Not yet. Let's see what Sienna does first. I drove home and waited. Sienna's routine was predictable. Home by 6:30, change clothes, check social media, start dinner. But today, she was late. 7:15 came and went. Then 7:30. At 7:47, her car pulled into the driveway. She sat there for several minutes before getting out, like she was gathering courage for whatever came next. She found me in the kitchen, reading a woodworking magazine and pretending everything was normal. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Okay. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same spot where we'd shared thousands of meals and conversations over 8 years of marriage. Tristan told me you called him today. He texted me by mistake. I responded. What did you say to him? I told him to stay away from my wife. Her face flushed. You had no right to do that, didn't I? He's been having an affair with my wife for months. I think that gives me some rights in this situation. It's not an affair. What is it then? It's complicated. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Complicated. That's what people say when they're doing something wrong but don't want to admit it. You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me, Sienna. Make me understand how my wife spending months lying to me, meeting secretly with another man, and planning her escape isn't an affair. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded on the table. I didn't plan for this to happen, she said finally, but it did happen. Yes. Are you in love with him? Another long pause. I don't know. Do you love me? I don't know that either. The honesty was brutal, but it was also a relief. Finally, we were having a real conversation. How long? I asked, and how long what? How long have you been questioning whether you love me? Months, maybe longer. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I kept thinking it was just a phase, that the feelings would come back, but they didn't. So you found someone else. It wasn't like that. Tristan and I started as friends. He listened to me, understood what I was going through at work. He made me feel appreciated. And I didn't? Not the way I needed. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What did I do wrong, Sienna? What could I have done differently? It's not about what you did wrong, it's about who we've become. We're different people than we were when we got married. Different how? I've grown. My career has taken off. I have new interests, new goals, but you're still the same person you were 8 years ago. The accusation stung because there was truth in it, but not the truth she thought. You're right, I said. I am still the same person. I still believe in honesty, commitment, and working through problems instead of running away from them. I still think marriage means something more than a legal contract you can dissolve when it becomes inconvenient. That's not fair, isn't it? Because it seems to me like the moment things got difficult, you started looking for an exit instead of trying to fix what we had. I tried to fix it. When? When did you try to fix it, Sienna? Because I remember trying to talk to you about the distance between us and you brushing me off. I remember suggesting couples counseling and you saying you were too busy at work. I remember trying to plan date nights and you canceling because of some social media emergency or work crisis. She was crying now, but I couldn't tell if the tears were from guilt or frustration. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Either you want to be married to me or you don't. Either you're willing to fight for us or you're not. And if I'm not, the question hung in the air between us like a challenge. Then we get divorced and you can pursue your fresh start with Tristan or whoever else catches your fancy. But we do it honestly, without lies and deception and character assassination. Character assassination? The story you've been telling people about how controlling and unsupportive I am. The narrative you've been building to justify what you're doing. She had the grace to look ashamed. I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. Every lie, every secret meeting, every time you came home and pretended everything was fine while you were planning your escape. You destroyed something that took 8 years to build. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Sienna spoke. What happens now? That depends on you. Do you want to try to save our marriage or do you want out? I need time to think. How much time? I don't know. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the whole conversation. Well, while you're thinking, I'll be making plans of my own, because I'm not going to sit around waiting for you to decide whether I'm worth fighting for. That night, Sienna slept in the guest room. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the old house settle around us. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear sirens, probably heading to some other domestic crisis in some other failing marriage. But for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. The lies were finally in the open. Whatever came next would be honest, even if it was ugly. I was done being the understanding husband. It was time to be something else entirely. The next morning brought an unexpected development. I was in my workshop at 6 a.m., unable to sleep, when my phone rang. Margaret Chen from HR. Evan, I hope I'm not calling too early. Not at all. What's going on? There's been a development at work. Tristan Bell filed a harassment complaint against you yesterday, claiming you threatened him. I felt my blood pressure spike. He did what? He says you called him and made threatening statements about making his life complicated if he didn't stop seeing Sienna. I told him to stay away from my wife. That's not harassment. That's a reasonable request from a betrayed husband. I understand, but he's claiming he feels unsafe. He's asking for a restraining order. On what grounds? I never threatened violence. That's what I told HR, but there's something else you should know. Sienna corroborated his story. She told our director that you've been exhibiting controlling and potentially dangerous behavior. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Bad enough that she'd been cheating, but now she was actively trying to paint me as some kind of threat. Margaret, you know that's not true. You've seen me at company events for years. I know, Evan, that's why I'm calling. Because I also know what I saw in those photos, and I know who's really lying here. What can I do? Document everything, every interaction, every conversation, and be very careful about any contact with either of them. They're clearly trying to build a case that you're the aggressor. After Margaret hung up, I sat in my workshop trying to process this new reality. Not only was my wife having an affair, but she and her lover were now actively working to make me look like the villain. I called my lawyer, David Brennan, a family law attorney Brick had recommended. I need to see you today, I told him. Emergency. How big an emergency? My wife is having an affair. And now she and her lover are trying to get a restraining order against me. I'll make time. Can you be here at 10? David's office was in a converted Victorian house in the Old Port, all exposed brick and hardwood floors. He was a guy in his 50s who looked like he'd seen every variation of marital disaster and wasn't surprised by any of them anymore. I laid out the whole story, the affair, the evidence, Tristan's accidental text, and now the harassment complaint. David listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. First thing, he said when I finished, no more contact with the boyfriend. None. Don't call him, don't text him, don't go near him. They're baiting you into doing something they can use against you. But he's sleeping with my wife, and that's between your wife and you. The boyfriend is irrelevant to your marriage. Legally speaking, focus on Sienna. What about the restraining order? Unlikely to be granted based on what you've told me. One phone call where you told him to stay away from your wife isn't harassment, but we need to be prepared for them to escalate. How? False domestic violence claims, allegations of financial control or emotional misuse. It's a common playbook for people trying to justify their own bad behavior. David leaned back in his chair. Evan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Have you ever laid a hand on your wife? Ever threatened her physically? Ever controlled her access to money or communication? Never. I've never even raised my voice to her until this week. Good, because they're going to try to paint you as a misuser. It's the easiest way to flip the narrative and make her the victim. So what do? We go on offense. File for divorce first, on grounds of adultery. Present all your evidence. Make them respond to your accusations instead of letting them control the story. I left David's office with a thick folder of paperwork and a sick feeling in my stomach. Filing for divorce felt like admitting defeat, but I was beginning to understand that the marriage I'd been trying to save had ended months ago. I just hadn't been informed. That afternoon, I drove to Brick's auto repair shop. He was under the hood of a Honda Civic, cursing at something in the engine compartment. Legal advice didn't go well, he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. Could be better. They're trying to flip the script, make me the bad guy. Figured they might. What's the plan? File for divorce, present evidence of the affair, hope the truth matters more than their sob story. Brick nodded. What do you need from me? Help me document everything, and maybe keep an eye on things while I'm dealing with lawyers. You got it, but Evan, you need to prepare yourself for this to get worse before it gets better. How much worse? These people have already shown they're willing to lie and manipulate to get what they want. They're not going to stop just because you filed some paperwork. He was right, of course. That evening, I got a preview of what was coming. I was at home working on invoices when someone started pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. Through the window, I saw Kara Whitman on my front porch, her face red with anger. I opened the door but left the chain on. What do you want, Kara? I want to talk to you about what you're doing to Sienna. I'm not doing anything to Sienna. Bees. You're stalking her, threatening her friends, trying to destroy her reputation. I'm protecting myself from my cheating wife and her lying boyfriend. Sienna is not cheating. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot of Tristan's accidental text. Can't stop thinking about Friday night. When can I see you again? That sound like a business relationship to you? Kara's expression faltered for a moment, then hardened again. You probably faked that. Right. I faked a text message from a number I didn't have, about a night I didn't know they'd spent together, and somehow tricked Tristan into admitting it during our phone call. Sienna says you're becoming dangerous, that you've been following her, making threats. Sienna's lying, Kara. just like she's been lying about everything else for months. I don't believe you. I don't care what you believe. But you might want to ask yourself why you're standing on my porch defending someone who's been lying to you too. What do you mean? I mean, Sienna's been having an affair for months, and you've been helping her cover it up. All those girls' nights, all those work emergencies, all those times she needed you to provide an alibi. You've been an accessory to adultery. Kara's face went pale. That's not... She wouldn't what? Lie to her best friend? Use you to help deceive her husband? Because that's exactly what she's been doing. I closed the door and left Kara standing on my porch. Through the window, I watched her pull out her phone and make a call, probably to Sienna. The conversation looked heated. An hour later, my phone rang. Sienna. What did you say to Kara? I told her the truth. Something you might want to try sometime. You're destroying my friendships. I'm not destroying anything, Sienna. You did that when you decided to lie to everyone who cares about you. I want you to stop. Stop talking to my friends. Stop interfering with my work. Stop trying to control the situation. Or what? Or I'll file for a restraining order myself. I'll tell them you're stalking me, threatening me, making me fear for my safety. The threat was delivered in a calm, matter-of-fact tone that made it even more chilling. Go ahead, I said. File your restraining order. But remember, Sienna, once we're in court, everything comes out. Every lie, every secret meeting, every text message. Are you ready for that level of scrutiny? She hung up without answering. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the woman I'd married 8 years ago, trying to figure out when she'd become someone capable of such calculated cruelty. The Sienna I'd fallen in love with had been ambitious but kind, driven but honest. This new version was a stranger wearing my wife's face. Wednesday morning brought the answer to my question. I was drinking coffee and reading the divorce papers David had prepared when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I saw a police cruiser. 2 officers came to the door, both young, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Harper, we need to speak with you about a complaint filed by your wife. They were polite but firm. Sienna had filed for a temporary restraining order, claiming I'd been following her, making threatening phone calls, and exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior. The order required me to stay at least 500 feet away from her workplace, and any location where she might reasonably be expected to be. This includes your shared residence, one of the officers explained. You'll need to find alternative accommodations until the hearing next week. I stared at him. She's kicking me out of my own house? It's a temporary measure, sir. You'll have a chance to contest it in court. I packed a bag and drove to Brick's place, my mind reeling. In the space of 72 hours, I'd gone from trying to save my marriage to being legally prohibited from going home. But as I sat in Brick's living room that night, drinking beer and staring at the ceiling, I realized something important. Sienna had just made a critical mistake. By filing the restraining order, she'd forced everything into the legal system. And in court, unlike in the gossip circles of her social media world, the truth actually mattered. She wanted to play hardball, fine, but she was about to learn that I'd been building custom cabinets for 15 years, and I knew how to work with precision tools. It was time to show her what real craftsmanship looked like.